Got it.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. I know a lot of you are just joining, getting your audio connected. We are so happy to have you here this morning for ICM's very first Spotlight series. I say this morning, it might be evening, it might be afternoon, wherever you are in the world joining us. And feel free to use that chat window and let us know where you are right now. Say hi. Some of you might have been on our webinar just earlier this week with Shifa, our Student Success Advisor, and I know there was a lot of chatting going on there. So some of you might already be good friends by now, but we are very happy to welcome you to our very first Spotlight series. We have a special guest, an instructor from ICM, Dr. Marilyn Simon, and she's going to be spending some time with you talking about one of her passions, Hamlet and Shakespeare. You probably would guess, or maybe not hard to guess, that Marilyn is an English literature instructor at ICM. She also teaches ILS, which is a course that every student will enroll in their first term. So welcome, Marilyn. Hello. Thank you so much for coming today.
Hi, thanks. Thanks, Lindsay. And hi, everybody. Yeah, sure. I can see people. Hi from India, hi from Bangladesh and Mexico. So hello, world. I hope you guys are doing well this morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is. ICM's asked me to speak a bit about the things we do in English class. So I thought I would talk a bit about Shakespeare, who is somebody that I think all of you have heard of. If you haven't read any of his stuff yet, that's fine. But we certainly know who Will Shakespeare is. So just briefly, I always find this fascinating. In today's world, Shakespeare has this kind of like a real authority. He's seen to be really formal, really important and smart. But in his own day and age, Shakespeare was simply the son of a glove maker from a small town in the middle of England. He wasn't important. His parents weren't important. He wasn't particularly poor, but he certainly wasn't particularly wealthy. He was just a regular guy named Will. At that time in England, so we're talking about the middle to late 1500s. So Shakespeare was born in 1563. So that's about 430 years ago, quite a long time ago. Most people actually in England could read. This is something that many people aren't aware of. We think literacy and reading and writing has been a fairly recent development in human history, but actually in Shakespeare's day, most people could read. This was, and that was, somebody's read a lot of Shakespeare's plays. Awesome, glad to hear. There's a whole bunch of reasons for why Shakespeare could read. He was one of the first generations of regular folk like us to be taught how to read. But he started school, he would have been about 6 or 7 years old when he started school. And here is a fun fact for you guys to think about next time you're sitting in a class. In Shakespeare's day in England, nobody drank water, like ever. You just couldn't because, excuse me, you couldn't drink water because it was filled with bacteria and it would make you very, very sick. They didn't have really medicine back then. So what everybody drank was beer, a lot of beer. 16 pints a day was the average beer consumption of the average person in England 430 years ago. 16 pints a day. That is a lot of beer. So at about age 6 or 7, when Will Shakespeare would go to school, and they would start it quite early, probably at around 6 or 7 a.m., the first thing would be to give them energy and to sort of help fuel them. Each kid would get a pint of beer. at like 6 years old. So I'm not saying this is ever going to happen at ICM. I don't think it will, but it is something to think about when you're reading Shakespeare. These plays are written by a guy who's probably had 16 pints of beer every day. If you're like, oh, that's why they don't make sense, you may be onto something. At any rate, Shakespeare was a regular guy. He apprenticed with his father making gloves, just a regular sort of career. And at some point, we lose track of him. So at about age 18, we know that Will Shakespeare got married. In fact, here's another little tidbit of gossip. Shakespeare's wife was about 9 years older than him. So when they got married, he was 18. She was 27. So like woman age, he's just young. She's 27. And 6 months later, they had their first child. Wait a second. 6 months later, yes, that is right, students. Will Shakespeare, probably for sure, got an older woman pregnant outside of wedlock and was thus told to marry her and did. So they ended up having a very long marriage. She was way before the wedding. Exactly. Scandal. But by all accounts, they had a really sort of good marriage and they worked really well together. He died in his early 50s, alas. She was 9 years older than him, and she lived about 9 years after he died. So she had like 20 years on him, which is so typical for a good solid English wife, just to outlive her husband like that. But anyways, we seem to think that they had a very happy marriage. Will Shakespeare went away for like 10 years. Like in his 20s, we don't know what he did. He might have been a tutor, like a private tutor for a very wealthy English family. This is very possible, given the fact that it seems as though Shakespeare had access to a number of books that he may not have had access to simply at like a public school. So Shakespeare never went to university. He wasn't that rich. He wasn't able to go and get a degree. So he basically just had the equivalent of high school. But somehow he managed to get his hands on a lot of books, do a lot of reading, and in his late 20s, so at around age 28, 29, suddenly he shows up in London, which is today is 2 hours from his hometown by train. Back then, it would have been like 5 days from his hometown by horse carriage or by walking even. But he shows up in London and he starts writing for the theater, so the big stage. So we don't know exactly what Shakespeare did for a while, but we know in his late 20s, he worked in the theater and began just sort of writing smaller plays, even writing portions of plays with other playwrights. He acted himself. So he had small parts in the play. He never really took a leading role acting, it seems, but he did play small parts in his own plays as well as other people's plays. But by, I don't know, after about the first 3 years or so that we have record of Shakespeare being involved in the theater world in England, he became essentially the principal writer for a theater company, so for a theater business. And we're able then to sort of trace his career quite clearly based on records of play publications and so forth. By the time Shakespeare retired in about 1614 or so, he seems to have gone back to his hometown from London, hung out with his wife, and he had daughters, so he hung out with his daughters. By the time he retired, he was actually very wealthy. He managed to buy a very large property in his hometown, so large that it had like staff, like it was essentially a business, and not just a small business, a big business. So his wife would have been running a whole economy, which is something that, again, people may find surprising, that a woman 430 years ago was essentially the boss lady of at least 30 to 40 people. She ran agricultural business. She would run certain textile things. And not surprisingly, she ran a fairly lucrative beer brewing business. So she brewed her own beer. You got to get those 16 pints from somewhere. Anyways, that's a little bit of information on Shakespeare's life that you may not have known before. He wasn't a big deal, but he did very well for himself, based solely on hard work, imagination, and a heck of a lot of brains. The guy was pretty smart. So so my favorite, well, I don't know which was my favorite Shakespeare play. I get asked this a lot, and it sort of changes based on my mood. One of my favorite plays is Hamlet, which I have right here. So my copy of Hamlet is literally in tatters, as you can see. And I mean, it's like pretty sad. Did you guys ever have, when you were like a little baby, like a special teddy bear or a special blanket that you just loved so much that it became like a rag and just, yeah. So essentially Hamlet is my teddy bear. That's how much I love it. We snuggle. No, just kidding. I don't actually snuggle with it, but I have read it. Yeah, you still have it. Yeah, exactly. You guys know what I'm talking about. I mean, I have read this play many times to the point of sort of being unhealthily obsessed with it. So as a result, my copy and my book has to be held together by a rubber band, and it's in pretty poor form. Anyways, the play itself is 422 years old. So it's okay if mine looks maybe not quite 422 years old, but maybe 419 years old. This is in pretty rough shape. Anyways, most people, when they think of Hamlet, they think of the famous speech that we all associate with Shakespeare. Who knows what I'm talking about? A bunch of you do. It starts with "to be or not to be," right? You guys know that speech? To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take up arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing end them. So that's the sort of great Shakespearean speech that we associate with Hamlet. However, it's a good question to ask. To be or not to be? Do we live or die? But that is not the question that Shakespeare asks repeatedly throughout the play. To be or not to be is a secondary question. The play actually begins with a question, and I think it is the most important question of the play. It's a question that is only 2 words. Who's there? You're like, that's not a very interesting question. What is this, a knock-knock joke? Who's there? Hamlet. Hamlet who? Hamlet, I don't know. Anyway, I didn't think that joke through. I've got no punchline. Anyways. It's early for me in the morning. What can I say? The play begins like this. There's a castle at Elsinore. So this is in Denmark a long time ago. And it's dark. Of course, we can't know it's dark. In Shakespeare's time, there weren't any like lighting effects. There weren't even a lot of stage props. It was basically an empty stage. And incidentally, it was in the middle of the afternoon. Shakespeare had to perform the plays. Everybody performed the plays in the middle of the afternoon. And that's because candles were really expensive. You couldn't light a whole big theater adequately with candles, right? It costs so much money to burn all that wax. So he had his plays. Everybody went to the theater at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and there was no roof on the building. It was open to the sun, and so that's how you could light the stage. Hamlet begins at midnight or just after midnight. We know this because that's what the characters begin to talk about, that it's the middle of the night. So the setting is, it's in the middle of the night, and these are soldiers watching for something on the castle walls of Denmark. One soldier is coming on to duty, to the night's watch, and the other one is going to leave. So they're sort of encountering each other in the dark. And the first soldier says, "Who's there?" And the next person says, "Nay, answer me. Stand and unfold yourself." And that is an interesting phrase, unfold yourself. So in our English class that I do with ICM students, when we study Hamlet, we focus on those two issues. Who's there? Okay, so what does he mean by who's there? I mean, what does Shakespeare mean? Who are other people? How do I know that what I see from other people is who they really are? How do I know I can trust other people? How do I know that other people are being real with me? If you guys think, well, I know who other people are. I know other people. Let me ask you this. I mean, your parents know you quite well. Do they? Really? They know all your internet searches. They know all the things you talk about with your friends. They know you. No. Really? Yeah, no, they don't. And incidentally, students, you might think you know your parents well, but I have news for you. You're the child. They're the adults. There are many things about your parents that you don't know. You think you know, but you don't know. If you've ever had a girlfriend or a boyfriend, this is somebody with whom you feel very close and very connected. It is also the person that you might be most crazy about, because you suddenly realize, I don't really know. Does he really feel about me the way I feel about him? Does he really think about me the way I think about it? Does he think about other girls the way I think about him? Can I really trust him? Is he really showing me who he truly is? Or are there secrets there that he's just hiding? And so it becomes a little bit of a more complicated issue when you start to realize, you're right, it is hard to know somebody else. Who's there also applies to yourself. How can I show other people who I am? Well, I can show them. Okay, but showing is only showing, and you can fake that. You can show them anything you want. It might not be true. And for that matter, how do you know that you're really discovering excuse me, who's there on the inside anyways? Maybe you're a bit confused about yourself. How do you know yourself? This is a question Hamlet asks repeatedly. Who am I? What is a self? And it's an interesting question. I mean, think about this sentence. You hear it said a lot. Oh, I just want to get to know myself. Who is the I and who is the myself that you're getting to know? Wait a second. Suddenly you've actually admitted that there's two selves here. And that's weird. I am one person. That's it. I am just me. I want to get to know myself. So does that mean that I'm two? I don't know who the I is. Aren't I only just I? Who is this other self that I might uncover, or to use Hamlet's or Shakespeare's phrase, unfold? How do you unfold yourself, even to yourself? This is especially contemporary in our society, when we're sort of always like encouraged to get to know ourselves, express ourselves, find our true self. But what is that? And how do we know it's really true? I mean, we're looking for something within us. What is this thing? Where do we get this idea from? So those are the questions. That is the question that Hamlet really wrestles with. At one part of the play, Hamlet even says this. He says, Gertrude, his mother, says, Hamlet, why do you seem so sad? And Hamlet says, seems, madam. Nay, it is. I know not seems. So then Hamlet goes, so he says, I don't seem to be sad. I am sad. But then Hamlet says, look, this is how I'm acting. I'm dressed in black. I am too, just incidentally this morning. It was just not deliberate. I'm dressed in black. I cry often. I look sad. My eyes are downcast. And I'm doing these things because I'm trying to show you outwardly how I feel inwardly. However, and then Hamlet admits, these are actions that a man might play, he says. And he says, however, I know that these outward things I'm doing might be fake. People can pretend. They can just dress all emo or whatever and pretend to be all depressed, even while, like, in reality, you're actually kind of not. I know you can fake these things. And he's like, however, I'm not faking them. The problem for Hamlet isn't that the outside is false. It's that it's always inadequate to show how he truly feels on the inside. So the frustration that Hamlet goes through is, I think, the frustration of all of us. How do I get people to see my true self when all I can ever do is show them my true self? I can't really get them to see it because you can't. It passes show, as Hamlet says. It's beyond showing. So anyways, it's a bit of an existential play, as you could probably tell. It's Shakespeare, so everybody dies. But if you would go to, English class, and of course it takes much longer than 35 minutes or 25 minutes to discuss these things, we sort of trace Hamlet's progress through this question. And what students often find is that Shakespeare is much more contemporary than we think he is. So a lot of the questions we have right now about, like, identity, about showing the world who we really are, these are questions that Shakespeare has already wrestled with 422 years ago, or whatever it is. And the answer that Hamlet comes up with in the final act of the play yes, is that everybody dies. And actually, that kind of is the answer, right? Anyways, the answer that Hamlet comes up with is, now how shall I put this in a way? His anxiety is around having to choose who he is. This sense of being indeterminate. The answer he comes up with is that I don't have to choose. There are parts of me that were chosen before I was born. The fact that you are born is something you didn't choose. It is the primal event. You can't change it. And Hamlet comes to peace with that in a really kind of profound and beautiful way. In fact, he steps into who he is with a sense of faith and gratitude, even though his life ends tragically, prematurely, and in a way he wouldn't have wanted it to. But ultimately it's a really happy play, I think, because it's about gratitude for being, to be. Anyways, that's a little bit of info on Shakespeare, on Hamlet, on what the kinds of questions we ask in English class when we examine the play, and some fun facts about English beer drinking.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. I know I'm not alone here when I say that was definitely the highlight of my day. I saw just 7 minutes into our session here, a student said that this class has made his day. So we're really happy that you're able to come here. I know my perspective of Shakespeare has absolutely changed, and I very much wish that I had you as an instructor when I was in university. But I really liked how you said that Shakespeare is much more contemporary than you think. Even just in 30 minutes, like I said, my perspective has totally changed. I think the students have also really enjoyed this, and I hope when they have a chance to enroll in ILS and perhaps with you or in English 1400, your English literature course, if they are with you, then they'll have a little bit of a sneak peek into some of the themes that they'll be talking about. But even if you're not, I think that they had this was a really great chance for them to meet an ICM instructor. We have a couple minutes. I know I see lots of thank yous, love this coming in. So we're so happy so many people joined us. If you have any questions for Marilyn about Shakespeare or some of the things she shared about Hamlet, feel free to pop it, or other plays too. I know that there was a few others coming up. Feel free to pop it in the chat. We'll just keep an eye and see if there's anything
right. Unfortunately, there's no beer in my class.
That is probably a question on everyone's mind. Thanks.
Don't ask.
Oh, this class made someone's day. I saw lots of laughing, lots of laughter. What a perfect way, whether you're starting your day or ending your day or somewhere in the middle. I think this was a great thing to do. What's a good book to start with Shakespeare? Is a question that just came in.
I don't know. I mean, any of them. My daughter, I have a couple daughters. One of them, she's in junior high, and she started with Midsummer Night's Dream. It's a fun play. Guess what? Nobody dies. It's a really fun play, very silly. And it's not very long. So there you go. There's a bonus for you guys. It's pretty short. Yeah, good. See, yeah, you love that play. Yes, it's very funny. Bottom, the Tempest. Whew, the Tempest. You could start with that one too. I mean, Prospero and Ariel and Caliban, those are some really fun characters. I saw a number of people popping up saying Merchant of Venice. Yep, that's a good one too. You know, if you prick me, do I not bleed? Is that famous Macbeth? Okay, yeah, you could start with Macbeth if you're into like spooky stuff. Definitely choose Macbeth. Yeah, there's a recent film on Macbeth. Literally, it just came out this year. It stars Denzel Washington, and it's on Apple TV. I think it's directed by Joel Cohen, who's he wrote. Yeah, you saw it. Yeah, it's really powerful. He wrote or directed like No Country for Old Men and stuff. Like he's an Academy Award winning director. Anyways, it's very good. Denzel Washington is excellent. Yeah, it's a good play. Yeah. I don't know. Just start. What's my answer? What should I start with? Just start.
Just start. Great advice. I think that applies to a lot of different things. Wonderful. Okay, well, that is it for today. Thank you so much again.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, we don't only do Shakespeare. We do a whole bunch of other stuff. So, yeah, somebody just asked, will we only do Shakespeare? No. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you, Lindsay. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. No problem. Oh, one more question came in, Stephen. So we'll wrap it up with Stephen's question.
Sure.
Here's Stephen's question.
It was like,
of Shakespeare's plays do you like more, the old version or the new?
Like in film adaptations, maybe you mean?
Yeah.
I like all. I mean, it's hard to say, right? So some of them are like really modern adaptations, and some of them are more classic. And I like both. I just like them. So yeah.
Okay, well, Krishna says, see you soon. I mean, everyone, see you soon. Thank you so much for coming. For those of you that are joining in our May intake, we have a couple more sessions coming up for you, including a travel Q&A next week with our Student Success Advisor, Scott. We'll also have a webinar all about enrollment with myself, Jenny, and John V, the marketing team, to help get you towards enrollment. And for those of you that are joining in September, we'll actually have more of these sessions coming up, including microbiology, chemistry, nutrition, human anthropology. So I think this was a wonderful way. You've set the bar really high, Marilyn. Thank you again for coming. I had a lot of fun. I think the students did too. I'm seeing lots of so helpful thank you in the chat. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Take care.
Bye, guys. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.